Taylor Jenkins has been fired by the Memphis Grizzlies. That is not a surprise. The surprise is the fact that it is happening now with 9 games left in the regular season and ahead of a major, impactful game against the Los Angeles Lakers tomorrow night. I'm going to break down all that you need to know about Taylor Jenkins no longer being the head coach of the Memphis Grizzlies. Next here on Locked On Grizzlies. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to this special episode of Locked On Grizzlies. I am your host, Joe Mullinax. To Michael Cole, my co-host, not able to be with us. He is the Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for the Commercial Appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee. Understandably busy with the news of the day. Taylor Jenkins no longer the head coach of the Memphis Grizzlies after 6 seasons and being the winningest coach in franchise history. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by 5-Hour Energy. Head to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from. Need one now? Grab a 5-Hour Energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store. Stock up today and stay energized. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. Make Locked On Grizzlies part of your NBA and Memphis Grizzlies content consumption each and every time that an episode drops. And also make sure you're subscribing over at LockedOnDaily.com, getting words on the Grizzlies and so much more from me for free each and every single day. Taylor Jenkins being fired by the organization is not a surprise. If you've been following this team up to this point in the season, especially these last few months, it feels like it was a matter of time in some ways. Now, I'm not going to try to revise history. If you're an everydayer with us here at Locked On Grizzlies, you know that I have been an ardent Jenkins defender throughout my time here with Locked On. That is not what I'm trying to say. It's the last few months for me that it feels like something has shifted, something has changed, and that clearly maybe it's the last few months, maybe it's the last several weeks. Somewhere since the calendar turned into 2025, something has been amiss. Since the All-Star break, the Memphis Grizzlies are 8-11. They have a losing record. The Memphis Grizzlies also have struggled this season with teams that have a record above 500. Memphis is 11-20 against such franchises, per Michael Cole in the Commercial Appeal. The Memphis Grizzlies have had one of the league's worst defenses in 2025. They have been inconsistent against those really good teams, and that is something that Taylor Jenkins has hung his hat on in the past. Even in past situations when the Grizzlies have struggled, it has not been the defense that has fallen off. Memphis has almost always had a top team defense in the NBA. A great example of that is last season, the 2023-2024 Memphis Grizzlies. When injuries beset the franchise, Ja Morant started suspended. The team was in limbo. The Grizzlies still had a top 13 defense. They were ranked 13th in that season, even with all the chaos that surrounded them. In the last several months, that ranking has fallen to almost 20th in the NBA. They are 19th in the NBA per cleaning the glass in defensive points per possession since January 1st. It feels like the team was going backwards. It feels like the team was not progressing and they were not amplifying at the time that they needed to be ramping up. So the fact that Jenkins was let go is not a surprise. The losing record, the questionable coaching decisions in game. John Hollinger pointed out on X, and it was something that was notable at the time. Just one example, but a decision that was made against the Atlanta Hawks, where he, and by he, I mean Jenkins, willingly made a change to his philosophy that was being executed that hurt what Memphis was trying to do in that space at that time. The reality being that a timeout was called and the team was not able to get an advantage against the Atlanta Hawks. Trae Young being able to go out of the game, defensive reasons, end game situations that cost the Grizzlies a game. Hollinger at John Hollinger tweeted about that. But it's not just that particular instance. It is also rotational decisions. It is also the choice that was made by Jenkins to approach this offense differently. And it's come with good results. The half-court offense is now middle of the ground, according to Cleaning the Glass, on the season. They are doing things better in the half-court than they have at any point in the Jenkins regime. But Desmond Bane's numbers have regressed. Ja Morant's numbers have regressed. You are not seeing the same kind of output from your two lead guards that you have had in the past. So while other players, admittedly Jaren Jackson Jr., but also guys like Santi Aldama, guys like Scottie Pippen Jr., you have numerous guys that have seen things improve for them. That is not the case across the board when it comes to, most notably, your biggest offensive weapon, Ja Morant, who in season 6 for him is scoring points at a rate more comparable to what he has done as a rookie or a couple of seasons ago. He is not progressing. He is not growing. He is not getting where you need him to be. And yes, injuries have played a role in that. But as important as Taylor Jenkins has been for development, and that is undoubtedly true, this team does not get to where they are in the here and now without Taylor Jenkins. But at the same token, Ja Morant not seeing offensive progress the way that you need. Desmond Bane not seeing offensive progress the way that you need. Desmond Bane is posting a career-high turnover rate. You're asking him to do more things offensively, and he is turning the ball over, and there hasn't been an ability to make a change that is substantive enough to cut off those issues. Nationally, you look at the record of the Grizzlies, 44-29 in the tough Western Conference. You see them having success, theoretically, against teams that they can potentially see in the NBA Finals. A win against the Boston Celtics stands out. The fact that just last night they were in the mix with the Oklahoma City Thunder, the last game that Taylor Jenkins will ever coach for the Memphis Grizzlies. For about 41-ish minutes, it was a competitive basketball game against, for potentially, the best team in the NBA, the likely NBA Finals representative in the Western Conference. There's flashes. But again, that record against 500 teams, 500 or better teams, 11-20. That is what doomed Taylor Jenkins. The fact that the defense has regressed, that is what doomed Taylor Jenkins. The reality that the scheme adjustments offensively do not align with putting your best players, in particular Ja Morant, in positions to be successful. The Grizzlies run less pick-and-roll offense than any team in the National Basketball Association. How does that help Ja Morant? That is where he thrives, is having the opportunity to create in those situations. How does that help Zach Edey, the 9th overall pick in this past draft? Edey has seen his role reduced. He has been moved from a starter to a reserve in recent games. And Edey has been with flaws. Edey is 7'4", 290 pounds. How does he fit long-term in the NBA is a question that's going to have to continue to be answered. But Edey is a screener, and Edey is an elite offensive rebounder. And Edey was picked in the lottery by the Memphis Grizzlies front office. And that is really the key. For Zach Kleiman, the general manager of the Memphis Grizzlies, to make this decision now with 9 games left in the regular season. We'll talk more in a moment about what comes next. 9 games left in the regular season. Memphis likely to be a playoff team. Zach Kleiman is not on the chopping block. If you think this decision was made without the blessing of Robert Pera, the Grizzlies owner, if you think this decision was made without the blessing of Jaren Jackson Jr. and Ja Morant, not that they asked for it, I don't think this is a case of a star saying this guy needs to go. Jenkins did a really good job building relationships with these players, building relationships with Morant and Jackson Jr. and Bane. This is not that, but it is a sign that Zach Kleiman has the confidence of Robert Pera. And it is a sign that Taylor Jenkins is no longer viewed as the guy that can get this team to the next level. Who is that guy? That's a great question. You would imagine it would be an interim coach from within. And DeMichael and I will talk in the days and weeks to come about how this has ripple effects, not just in the here and now, but in future planning for how this roster is shaped. Moving on from Taylor Jenkins is not the surprise. Over the last few months, it felt like the writing was on the wall. But doing it now, why now? And what will this decision happening now ripple out in the next 9 games and into the playoffs that the Grizzlies are still very much likely to figure into? We'll talk about that next, coming up on Locked On Grizzlies. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Daylight savings snuck up on us again. If you're feeling that lost hour of sleep still, 5 Hour Energy has your back. The extra sunshine means more time for fun, but sometimes you need a little boost to power through. Whether you're staying up late, watching the NCAA tournament, squeezing in a round of golf after work, or just trying to keep up with a busy day, 5 Hour Energy gives you that quick, refreshing pick-me-up whenever you need it. Longer days, getting outside for a hike or a run, Tropical Burst is a go-to for quick boosts. Or if you're going to the game, traveling, 5 Hour Energy is a great way to grab and keep up your refreshment. Head to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blue raspberry, and peach mango. You can even build your own 12-pack or 24-pack delivered right to your door. Need one now? Grab a 5 Hour Energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store. They're everywhere. Stock up today and stay energized. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is also brought to you by FanDuel. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories, and even who will be cutting down the nets. I have my eyes on a few underdogs this year. FanDuel makes it easy to stay and back them with spreads, totals, and game props. Plus, the FanDuel app is simple to use. When you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around. Thankfully, there's always something exciting to bet on over at FanDuel. So go visit FanDuel.com right now and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. So what comes next for the Memphis Grizzlies? They have a game tomorrow against the Los Angeles Lakers. And in the Locked On Daily newsletter today, I wrote about how getting Desmond Bane going had to be a priority. I wrote about letting LeBron James be the scorer. In his last 4 games, he hasn't been efficient offensively, really making him be that guy. Who is going to make those decisions? Who is going to be the one out there that leans into that choice? There are numerous assistants, too many to really name, that would make sense in that mix. But I do believe that you are going to see a different Grizzlies team. How could you not see a different Grizzlies team in the wake of this choice to move on from Taylor Jenkins? They clearly have a vision for some sort of change, and how that change comes will be on full display starting on Saturday. And I'm sure in the minutes and hours and moments to come, more and more will come out about why now. Why was the choice made to do this now? Do the Taylor Jenkins fans understand everything we talked about earlier in the show, the struggles of late? Do the Taylor Jenkins detractors understand that this is not going to fix a roster that is flawed? There's a lot of work that Zach Kleiman has his fingerprints on with this roster that Taylor Jenkins didn't have connections to. The fact that this team had to start 2 rookies, Jalen Wells and Zach Edey, because the Marcus Smart trade did not work out. It's understandable why Kleiman went that route, but he wears the failure of the Marcus Smart experience, not Taylor Jenkins. The Grizzlies are flawed as a roster, and how that gets addressed is not just going to be the issue of the next head coach. It's going to be the concern of Zach Kleiman and the team that is already established. In the game ahead, in the games ahead, it's possible they have a boost. Look at what happened to the Sacramento Kings. The firing of their head coach, bringing in Coach Christie, and how that reinvigorated them for a time. And then Sacramento returned back to what they were. And I think that it's important to keep that perspective. This is not going to save the Grizzlies season. Memphis was almost certainly on track to be the 4, 5, or 6 seed in the Western Conference, play the Lakers, play the Denver Nuggets, and lose in the first round. That is where things were trending. And I'm sure that Kleiman and others will come out and say, we need to take this as a wake-up call. This is our chance to save the season. And they talked about champion or bust. Right now, it looks like the bust option is the more likely one that is going to become reality. But this decision was not just made in the here and now. It was made for the future. It was made to drive home the point that this team is built to win and win in this moment. Development is no longer the focus. And if you want to criticize Taylor Jenkins, I talked about rotations earlier. I talked about scheme choices earlier. But if you are going to criticize Taylor Jenkins, it can't be about development. The teams that that need a coach that are young in this league should have Taylor Jenkins on speed dial as soon as possible, because he is phenomenal as a developmental coach. You can't say he's not. His record and what he did over his 6 years here in Memphis don't back that up. Whoever the next head coach is has to be ready to win now. Jaren Jackson Jr. is up for a contract extension. If you don't choose a coach that Jaren Jackson Jr. thinks can get the Memphis Grizzlies over the hump, he's not going to stay in Memphis. He will make the choice to go elsewhere. And now you're talking about broader issues. If your core is Ja, Dez, and Jaren, they need to be on board with whoever the next guy is. Maybe the Grizzlies beat the Lakers tomorrow night. It's possible. Maybe the Grizzlies go on a little bit of a spurt of a run, right? Maybe they go 6-3, 5-4 in these last 9 games. It's possible. What comes next after that? Do you believe in this roster as they are constructed with a Zach Edey and a Jalen Wells, Jay Huff because of the Brandon Clark injury, Santi Aldama? Do you really think that this team as built is going to be capable of knocking off the Lakers in a 7-game series? I believe they can if Ja Morant is healthy, and I believe they can if the roster is complete. They can compete with anybody. But they have to have the pieces in place that can accentuate their stars. And they have to have a coach in place that is going to be able to accentuate their stars. How can that happen 9 games left in the regular season going into the playoffs? It can't. Maybe Zach Kleiman thinks the answer is on the coaching staff currently. Maybe this is all predetermined. Or maybe they're going to go outside of the organization and bring in somebody with a fresh perspective on the talent that is already in the building. Because again, Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, they are on fully extended contracts. They are here for the foreseeable future. Jaren Jackson Jr. will be under contract next year, and then free agency comes up as an issue. The extension conversation is going to be a major talking point of this offseason. But this decision was not made, at least to me, for the Los Angeles Lakers on Saturday night. This was not a decision to try to save this season. This was a decision looking ahead and making it clear that the time to win is now. Does Ja Morant play now? I don't think Ja Morant got Taylor Jenkins fired, but I do think there was a return to play protocol put in place in part by Taylor Jenkins that obviously is no longer relevant. Does Ja Morant come back a little bit more easily? That's a fair question to ask. What happens with this franchise moving forward in terms of adjustments, in terms of rotations? There is so much to be unknown in this moment when it comes to this group of players, because nobody saw this coming in the here and now. That doesn't mean that people didn't predict that this would be the reality eventually. Taylor Jenkins has been struggling for some time. Nobody is denying that. These last few months have been rough, especially since the trade deadline. 8-11 since the trade deadline. 11-20 against teams with 500 or better records. The time for development has passed. The time for winning is now. How now are we talking? We can't look at this through the lens of now they're going to go on a run to the Western Conference Finals. This is about making it clear that accountability is in place, that the current state of affairs is not acceptable, and the team is willing to do what it feels needs to be done to take the next step in this era of Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr. being your big 3 core components to this team. Obviously, there will be more to come out in the days to come. DeMichael Cole and I will have you covered on all of those fronts here on Locked On Grizzlies. Make sure you're liking, commenting, rating, reviewing, subscribing, wherever you get podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. Make sure you're subscribing to our free daily newsletter, LockedOnDaily.com. I appreciate you being with me on this very unique edition of Locked On Grizzlies. Taylor Jenkins no longer the head coach of the Grizzlies. There's a game tomorrow night in Memphis against the Lakers. Going to be a fascinating topic and piece of relevance to focus on for the duration of this season. What comes next make sure you're sticking with us here on Locked On Grizzlies to figure out just that. Again, I'm Joe Mullinax, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. Make Locked On Grizzlies a part of your Grizzlies consumption moving forward. See ya.